me tell you how it will be.
Welcome back to The Price of Business. This is William Edmundson filling in for Kevin Price. And I'm proud to say we've got Bob Loeser in the studio of Robert A. Loeser and Associates. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I was expecting to see Kevin this morning, and then I saw on the web that he's now substituting for Waldo, and it's Where's Kevin now.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Yeah, that's it's always a mystery where Kevin is today. This week has been, you're right. Where's Waldo? It's Where's Kevin week.
Not even his tax man knows where he is.
That's right.
That's right. He may be with a convertible top down Route 66.
Could be.
Never know.
Could be making that deposit in the Cayman Islands.
I should have played Go On, Take the Money, and Run coming in here, but it is Taxman Bob, so we got to play Taxman.
It is exactly.
Well, good seeing you, and it's great to be here again.
Yeah, glad to have you here. Interesting week this week, huh?
Yes, very very much so. I mean, the primaries on Tuesday, I think, came out as expected. I mean, again, if you're a big Trump supporter, you might have said it should have been 10-1. Okay, it's 7-4 or whatever the case may be is sufficient enough, particularly when the only big state that was taken away from him was Texas.
Yep.
And you anticipated that unless Cruz fell on his face and crawled to the finish line.
Yeah, that would have probably been a fork in the side of Cruz if he couldn't deliver Texas.
Correct. And the fact that, interesting, my wife's family's from Oklahoma, and it surprised me a little bit that he came from so far behind in Oklahoma to win, a majority.
Yeah, that was kind of surprising. Tell me, how do you feel, do you think it benefits Trump that we aren't going to have a lot of Republican candidates dropping out just yet? They're going to be hanging on and presumably splitting
Yes,
votes.
because I think once that base is established, they're not going to go away 3 weeks later because they hear something better from Kasich or
Right.
Rubio or whatever the case may be. I mean, you're either much for or much against. The biggest problem now is the big money, the billionaires are going to throw their way as to these special PACs and super PACs to slur, anybody they want to slur. And in this case, it's Trump because they don't want it because they can't tie the purse strings.
Yeah.
They can't say, we want you to say this for this amount of money. All right. And that's what happened. Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter what it is. Here's your money. This is what you want, and we want you to say. And that's in particular, in my opinion, why Jeb Bush is no longer there.
Yeah.
All right. He was told what to say, and guess what? It didn't work.
It didn't work at all, did it?
And then when he started spitting in Trump's face, he didn't realize that the wind was blowing at 45 miles an hour back at him. Right. And it was all over.
Yeah. Don't spit into the wind. You're right. It's a crazy year out there, and one thing I think a lot of people are concerned about, people who are conservative and vote Republican, is will we have the same foolishness that we had when Romney was in the general election, where people stay home because it wasn't their guy?
Correct. And I don't think the case. I think that so many people are upset with the generality of what's happening that they're going to go out and vote no matter what. Okay, yeah. I mean, the even if. But that's interesting. You mentioned the name Mitt Romney. He has more passion for this election the last 2 weeks than he did the last 8-10 weeks of his own.
Absolutely.
Right. What? And remember, if you recall, who was the last one to turn in his tax returns? All right, before the general election. All right, and now he's calling the kettle black? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Hello, anybody home?
It was much later in the calendar year.
It was late September, if I'm not mistaken, just
I think
before
that's
the
right.
October 15th deadline.
Yeah, that's a good bit of difference.
Okay, and so why is he getting involved now? Has he got somebody paying him special interest money to make these statements? And again, as we talked about this bit with, and again, he's the prodigal son of Texas, but where does he come off making a statement about Trump saying that he's tied in with the mob?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that kind of came out of left field, don't you think, Bob?
Yes, and again, yes, he's a New York businessman. Has he dealt with unions and whatnot? Absolutely. Doesn't mean he's tied in with the mob and he's getting kickbacks under the table. I mean, that would be just like making a general statement to somebody like, oh, by the way, I heard you're gay. I mean, you're slandering the person's character without any proof. All right, and I guess that's what particularly our not only political system but our news, radio, TV get away with. Well, they can say it because they thought they heard it.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like the police at the door saying, I hear a child screaming in the background, so they kick down the door without a warrant.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little bit like people retweeting and
right.
not being responsible for the content that they themselves retweeted.
Exactly.
Oh, crazy.
So and on the Democratic side, interestingly enough, I mean, the powerhouse is going to win. I mean, there's just too much money and backing. But I mean, the theory is all good. And Kevin knows when we talk, I've got a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old. The 20-year-old's going to A&M. He's a great kid, engineering. And he was home over the weekend, and we were talking in general about the election and whatever. He said, well, I really like a lot of things that Bernie Sanders says. And we got to talking about it. I said, where are these things going to be paid for? He goes, well, the rich will just pay for them. And I go, but let's assume that I'm not in the 1% or 5%, okay, but I'm above middle income, so we're all going to be affected. And he sort of looked at me puzzled, and I said, so if the difference is, well, it's all right, take 3% or 5% from Dad, it's all right with me. Well, if that 5% comes off the top of where you're going to school, you're not going to school at A&M next year.
That's right.
Okay, you're going to Harris County Community College or wherever.
Or online.
No disrespect to any of that, but you don't understand where the money's coming from until we don't have it. And then you say, well, Dad, why can't you pay my tuition this semester? Or why do I have to go for another student loan? I said, well, you didn't care. You voted that socialist into the White House.
Yeah, or why can't you cover my insurance or
right.
Whatever it may be.
Right.
Yeah, it's scary that so many people can think just by looking at things on the surface. I mean, things aren't what they may seem to be,
or as simple as the words coming out of a politician's mouth.
Yeah.
And several of my clients, even conservative as they may be, they're in the realization that they work real hard. They may work 16, 18 hours a day at times, 60 hours a week. What's the incentive if more money is just going to be taken off at the top because you're successful?
Right. And how long do you think the 1% people are going to stick around?
Right.
I mean, California, I remember maybe it was last year, you may remember, Bob, but Phil Mickelson was talking about how it almost didn't make sense for him to work.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And things like, let's assume, and again, some of the candidates, Cruz is one of them, Rubio is sort of a flat tax. All right, well, that means in simple terms, charitable contributions aren't deductible.
Right.
Mortgage on the house is no longer deductible. Property taxes are no longer deductible. So if you have here in Houston the choice of living in Tomball, okay, again, no disrespect, or River Oaks, okay, more likely, if you don't have those deductions, why buy a $1.2 million home in Memorial when you can buy a $600,000 home in Tomball? You're going to, basically have no mortgage now, no taxes, no deduction. But what does that do? It either leaves the home builders that are building those luxury homes out of business, or they have a lot of homes sitting there in inventory waiting to be sold. Same thing holds true with charity. If you're giving, I have a couple clients that set up foundations this year after they retired. They donated $400,000 to the foundation and then distributed that $400,000 to 20-something charities.
Right.
Okay? That's deductible to him. All right? If it's no longer deductible, again, no disrespect to organizations, 401 or 403C. But the problem is, if you're not going to get the deduction, I'm not going to give $400,000. I'm going to give $100,000 from my heart, not $400,000 because the government's throwing in $150 in tax breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I mean, and it becomes a math problem, and
and Reagan's theory of trickle down, whether you like the man or not, works.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, the guy who buys the Mercedes-Benz or the nice house, then needs a yard man, et cetera, that trickles all the way down to the grocery store and the people that are in line cashing people out. Okay. And you got to believe, and the candidates that are out there that are pushing for less government, larger small business opportunities will increase that base of volume and income. And no, it's not killing the 5% and above, but it's now getting a more populace that instead of having 10,000 small businesses, now there are 150,000 small businesses, and you're collecting a small amount of tax on each and every one of them, all right, but makes the pot bigger. Right,
exactly. We've got just a few more minutes, but there are a couple more things I want to cover. One is I worked at at my precinct for the election. Actually, it's the precinct next to mine, and we had just a ton of people coming into the Republican primary with all this interest. That should be a good thing. It should be a great thing because then you can't. And again, both sides. I think Bernie Sanders has done that for the Democrats. I think the big positive is
you can't then complain that you didn't get out to vote or you didn't care or what. You know what? You're the one that's responsible. So whether or not your candidate in Texas won or lost by one vote, if you didn't get out, I don't want to hear the excuse that, well, he lost, it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah.
Every vote matters, okay? And that's why the Democrats in the last two elections, I really got bus full of people promising them cell phones and cable TV, all right, to get them to vote. That's how important it was to them, all right? Not that people need to be bribed to get out and vote. They should do it on their own will and what they want for this country and themselves.
But it is exactly that important.
Right.
Everybody's got to do it. You
Right.
can't complain if you don't.
Correct.
Good.
Correct.
Good. Well, we've got just a couple minutes left. It's that time of the year again, isn't it?
Yes, and we're seeing people, all of a sudden, it's now the first week in March, that they're finally have gathered up their information and getting their stuff together, have their questions. And it's funny that they'll, the oops, I forgot moments. Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you I made $40,000 on a stock that I've held since 1995 or whatever.
Right.
Okay, well, I can't do anything about that now. I mean,
Yeah.
the taxes are rounded 25%. You make 40, you're paying an extra 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the dejected voice on the other line, and you say, then, well, wait a minute. But you made $40,000 and you cashed out, and the total dollar was $250,000. I said, so let's change positions. I said, you give me the $250, I'll pay the tax on 40, and I said, I'll take a little bit off the top and give you the rest. And they look at me funny, and I go, then don't complain. Don't complain.
That's right. That's right. Good problem to have.
So yeah. But you're seeing a lot of people, although they've had reasonably good years. It's been conservative years, I guess I will say, the last year. I mean, if you say something to people that you're doing well, and not that you're going to get a knock on the door, but you sort of get a knock on the door and say, we'd like to take a look at whether it's a business with sales tax or payroll reports or whatever. I've just told people to keep tight to the vest. How you doing? Fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll be basically between you, your spouse, and your tax man as to how well you are or aren't doing.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's getting to be time where everybody's got to get those shoe boxes and get the appointment with their tax man, because I'm sure that nobody ever waits till the last minute, do they?
Not at all. I love the ones that'll say I'm coming in on the 10th of April, and oh, by the way, can you get it done by the 14th because we're leaving for Miami Beach.
Yeah.
That's nice. Did you invite me?
Exactly, because that would help your position in line.
That would. Or the other thing, good point you just made. Say, well, can't you just move me up? And I said, every client is going to want a response as to why they're no longer fifth on the list. They're now ninth because I've moved 4 people up. And I said, if you're willing to pay each of them $100, all right, I think that they probably moved down the list.
They
for
might
100.
take an extension.
That's right.
Exactly.
So.
Well, gosh, I've enjoyed talking with you, Bob. I understand why Kevin loves having you on here.
A pleasure. Very nice talking with you. And again, I think the one thing good, we got along real well. And politics is an issue. I know where to talk or where not to talk about politics. All right, and I don't think I gave any indication as to who or what where I may be standing.
Exactly.
All right, but everybody's got to look at it for what it's worth. I mean, as to the issues and not how big someone's hands or nose or ears are.
Exactly. You're listening to The Price of Business. We'll be back after this.
Let me tell you how it will be. There's one for you.